Hi everyone, my name is Roelant. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer at Adyen. We're a global payment company. And today I'm talking about data and payments. The payment space is super hot nowadays, and a big reason for that, I think, is around the possibilities data and big data are going to bring in this space. And I'd like to talk through a few examples today on what are some of the things we're doing with data right now that are helping merchants optimize their business. Let's first talk a bit about Adyen to give you some background and context. So Adyen is a payment company. We're handling payments for merchants all over the world. So we make available through our single platform 250 different payment types. And we support all the relevant currencies worldwide, so it's a true global solution. That's important because globally there's a lot of different payment cultures. People use a lot of different methods for payment, and we make them accessible to merchants that want to transact worldwide. So you probably know a lot of the companies we work for, where we're in the background. You might not know Adyen, but definitely we've probably handled quite a few of your transactions over the past period. And these are some of the companies we work with. In terms of the company, we raised a big round last December, 250 million at a 1.5 billion valuation. So we're one of the unicorns that originate out of Europe, and we're pretty proud of that. Now, so let's talk about data and why is everybody talking about data and payments? Picture this: so on a single day, at this moment, we handle about 2.5 million transactions. And those transactions that we handle for our merchants carry a lot of data points, a lot of information. Where is someone buying a product? What device are they using? Is it mobile? Is it tablet? Is it online? Is it in store? When are they buying? In which part of the day? What value? So it's telling us so much about this customer, and we're gathering all that data. It's an enormous amount of rich data, and that's really the exciting part about this. Because historically in payments, nothing like this was available. Merchants were used to having payment terminals where you stick a card in and the only thing you would get is payment successful or payment declined. This is really changing now. So I'd like to walk through 4 examples of things we are doing today with this data that are really helping merchants optimize their business. And the first one I wanted to talk about is around risk. So risk means there's fraud potential for everybody that sells online or in mobile, in a card not present environment. There is a risk that someone is using someone else's credit card. And this is a big issue for merchants. So typically what you do as a merchant selling online, you look at data points. So traditionally, merchants would look at a shopper email, a credit card number, an IP address, a few other data points, and would look at those data points and say, hey, how often has someone used this credit card for a transaction? How often has a transaction been made from this IP address? And look at the data for a transaction really on a static basis. What we're doing today, and this is what technology allows us to do, we can run much faster, stronger algorithms. And that basically allows us to now build a much broader picture around the shopper. So we're not looking at 3 data points, no, we're looking at that IP address, was it used before for other transactions, and those transactions, did they lead to fraud? Which email address were related to those transactions? So you get a much wider picture, and it helps us being much more specific on identifying who is a fraudster, but also who's the right customer. So what that means is that we're able to be much more precise in recognizing that and helping merchants make smart decisions. An example with one of our merchants recently, Westwing, by doing this, we've been able to get the balance much better around declining and allowing shoppers to pay with them, bringing chargebacks, fraud down, and ultimately we gave them 16 base points. Sounds small, but actually means $5.4 million in extra revenue. And this is purely by optimizing the risk approach with data. So there's a lot of money to be made there. Another example is around $0 and $1 authorization. Now, what am I talking about? You will find with anybody nowadays that runs an app or runs a subscription service, you come across these screens. When you register with Spotify, they will ask you to provide your card number when you register for a free trial. They will check whether the card is valid. They will not charge it yet. The same happens with Facebook, the same happens with Uber. All these companies are registering you as a new customer and they want to see whether your card is valid, and only when you start using the service a week or a month from now, they will start to charge your card. Visa and MasterCard have developed a specific message type for this, the $0 authorization. It's a message where you submit a card transaction with a $0 amount into the network. That basically goes out to all the thousands of issuers in the world on a web per transaction, and they will tell you whether the card is valid or not. This is an important thing when registering. It turns out that a lot of these issuers who run very old systems cannot handle this new modern $0 authorization message request, leading to declines, meaning that people that try to register cannot register. What also turns out to be the case, that some of these issuers that cannot deal with the $0 can handle the $1 authorization, which we then cancel. And we've been running big data analytics on which issuers, and we do that on a continuous basis, which issuers can handle the $0 and which ones can't. And we dynamically route the transactions with either a 0 or a 1. It sounds like very geeky technical approach, but what it means is that we've had merchants that see a over 5% increase of success rate at registration. So 5% more people that successfully register with the app or with the recurring service. These are customers that will stay there for a very long period. So we've seen with one company that given them 19 million in revenues. So again, a big number by really looking at the data and continuously optimizing that. Another example is around, if you ask anyone in payments that handles payments with merchants, payment managers, treasurers, and you ask them, what's your biggest concern? What's your biggest problem? They will, 9 out of 10 will say, refusals. How can I bring these refusals down? Typically 15% on average of transaction requests are refused. Someone wants to buy something, but it's not happening. This is a major concern. So what can we do about it? If you look at the 15% refusals, there's actually a breakdown. There's different reasons on why payments are being refused. Only 25% of refusals are because there's insufficient funds on the card. And this is one, yeah, we can all understand why that's being refused. 50% of refusals have a very generic code. Do not honor. Nobody knows what it really means, and there's many different reasons for it in the background. And that's an area where you can make an impact. If you think about a payment transaction, when we submit it directly to Visa, MasterCard, we don't just provide them with a card number and an expiry date and a name. No, we have to submit 100 data points. And these go into the Visa and MasterCard networks, and that's going out to the issuers that all have their own systems. And if you start tweaking some of these data points, you get a different outcome on those 50% of the refusals. Because some of these issuing systems worldwide are old, sometimes they cannot handle a certain transaction type. So what we're doing on an ongoing basis is running analysis across all the transactions we're handling, and we're looking all the time for anomalies. Where do we see higher than normal refusal rates with some of these issuers? And what we then start to do is A/B testing. You can tweak some of these data points just to see what happens. And in quite a few cases, you end up with higher success levels. The beauty of our approach is that we're running a very modern infrastructure. Typically the banks that have been dominant in this place for many decades can only do an update to their system once or twice a year. They're running on these very old platforms. So they'll never be able to do the A/B testing to make the small changes that are needed to try and optimize this. we can do it every week. And that leads to step-by-step small improvements, but ultimately on the big revenues we process for merchants, that's giving them a high impact. So we're able to get them millions and millions of revenues over time. And the beauty for us is, it's really differentiating us from the old banks that are gradually losing space in the payments world. The other thing that's really interesting about optimizing on refusals is around the refusal reason, insufficient funds. So this is the one where there's not enough spending balance on the card. If you start to dive into that one, and here we've taken an example for France, the UK, and the US, and basically what you're seeing here is a graph throughout the month on how often we see this refusal reason for our merchants, insufficient funds. You see that's a massive difference between these countries when this occurs. This data for any merchants that's into recurring, so anybody that's doing subscription payments, think about the likes of Netflix, Spotify, etc., and there's more and more nowadays. It's super important to have this information because it tells them exactly when should I run my next batch of subscription transactions. Do I do it on the 4th of the month or on the 30th, the end of the month? Typically people have always been doing it on the one day across every country, but this is showing you there's a lot of optimization you can do if you have the data. And again, this is where we're helping. Another area of optimization is on the front end, where we're doing A/B testing on how we submit messages to the network, as I just explained. We're also doing a lot of optimization on the front end, on how do you present payment methods. So credit cards is pretty simple on how you present that and optimize that. But there's a lot of other payment methods that are now more and more being used in apps and that are really important for merchants outside of the UK, outside of the US. Because in many of these countries, alternative payment methods are key. And what we're doing all the time with merchants is making small changes on how these payment methods and the interfaces are presented. This is a very obvious example of a big payment method in the Netherlands where obviously the second one, the B version, triggers 15% more success. And we're working together with these payment methods to optimize their interfaces for mobile use. So here's a very obvious example where it's made much more seamless for a consumer, but there's also other examples. So this is a relatively big prepaid card globally, especially being used a lot with digital services merchants, people that have online music, online gaming. And in this case, we've been working together with them in different ways to present the payment method. There's small changes, but actually the interface on the right, screen B, turns out to trigger 3% more successful payments. And again, if you're talking about the millions and millions of transactions, 3% is a massive improvement. Then finally, I'd like to talk a bit about where is this going. And that touches again on why is payments hot, why is data hot. And this is around the next thing we are working on, which is around omni-channel. So typically we've been working on helping merchants handle payments for their online stores, their mobile traffic, but more and more we're getting involved in handling their point of sale payments. So and ultimately where we are going is into a position where for any retailer, we'd like to do all their payments, in-store, online, mobile. And the beauty for retailers is that they'll have all the payment data in one system. Today, if you walk into a store and you buy something, you stick your card into a terminal, the store does not know who you are. They have no clue. And this is now changing because these terminals, when we connect them into our platform, we can give them instant feedback on how often this person has shopped with this merchant before, which channels they've been shopping before, and based on those patterns, you can start to give them offers, you can start to give them loyalty products. And this is what the key reason that retailers are super excited about omni-channel. And it turns out that payments is really the key for them to open up their data because there's nothing else that's enabling them to do. And suddenly they can start to get all the analysis, reporting that we've been building for online that's now going to come to point of sale, which is for them a fantastic opportunity. So this is, I think, where payments are going. This is why retailers and the market is very excited about payments and data. And this is, I think, where you're going to see much more offerings coming out from retailers as they move to this infrastructure. Thank you very much.